everyone. Welcome to the very first video of our brand new series on solving LeetCode daily challenges. Today, we are here kicking things off with an exciting problem, maximum score after splitting a string. Let's dive into the problem description and explore the solution approaches step by step. So, the question is as follows. Given a binary string S of zeros and ones, we need to basically split it into two non-empty substrings first, that is left and right, and our goal is to maximize the score, which is calculated as the number of zeros in the left substring plus the number of ones in the right substring. So let us consider some examples which are given here. The first string is 0 triple 1 0 1. Now here the maximum score that we can obtain is 5, and that is done by splitting the string like the left substring we have 0, and in the right substring we have triple 1 0 1, which makes this total score of 4 ones plus 1 0 in the left substring, total score of 5. The next example that we have is 00 0 1 1, and again this will give us a maximum score of 5 by splitting at the second point, that is 2 zeros in the left substring giving a score of 2 and 3 ones in the right substring giving a score of 3, combining to total score of 5. The third and the last example given here is 4 ones, and this gives us a total score of 3. Like we can split it at the first point where we have 1 in the left substring giving a score of 0 and 3 ones in the right substring giving a score of 3, which combines to a total score of 3 again. So now assume the problem is clear, and now let's discuss the approaches that we have to this. So beginning with the first, that is the brute force approach. So here the idea is very straightforward. That is the first idea that will come to our mind when we look at this problem. That is, we iterate through all possible split points of the string, and for each split we calculate the number of zeros in the left part. That is here, like when we split at the first point, we get 1 0 in the left substring and 4 ones we have in the right substring. So we calculate this. So there's basically three for loops going. One is the outer for loop, which will find the point of split. The first inner for loop will calculate the number of zeros in the left substring, and the second for loop, the second inner for loop, will calculate the number of ones in the right substring. So here we have the pseudocode for this, and let's also code this in the code solution itself and see if it's working or not. So let's start with defining the variables. So n will contain the total length of the string that we use for iterating over the loops, and maxsum will be the variable that will contain the maximum possible sum that we get out of all, not just to keep a track and so that we can return it later as well. And now let's begin with the for loops basically. So this is the outer loop that we have, and that will iterate to all the possible split points. In the inner first for loop we have so here we count the total number of zeros in the left substring. So basically if the character is 0, we increase the count of zeros. let's just take one variable here, sum, and let's iterate to that only, yeah. And similarly, for the second one, we have starting from I and we'll move till n. And here, if the character is 1, then we increase the sum value. And now we compare maximum equals to. And at the end, we return max sum. Now let's see if it works. Yeah, made some error. Okay, so let's check this. Yeah, so we have not, like, need to put this here inside the loop so that every time it gets reset, otherwise it just adds up. Let's submit and see the time complex and the space complexity that we get. So this is the loop where we had two inner for loops and one outer for loop, which gives us a time complexity of O(n) square and a space complexity of constant, because again we are not using any extra space. But then again, this is not the ideal solution because n square time comes is not what we expect. So now let's move on to the optimal solution. So this is another approach where we, like, calculate the total number of ones in the string. So we'll begin by calculating the number of ones. So we'll use one for loop here, and it gives us the time complexity O(n). Now, considering the first example that we are given on the lead code itself, that is 0 1 1 1 0 1. So when we count the total number of ones and store it in a variable, say count 1, and that comes to the value of 4. And then we initialize another variable, that is count 0, that we will iterate through and store the count of zeros that we have in the left substring basically. So when we start from here, the first point, here we have initially the maximum is set to minus infinity, so very small value for comparison. Count 1 is set to 4 and count 0 is set to 0. Now when we come to the first point, first character that we get, if it is 0, what we do is we increase the count of 0 first. Like first we modify the variable, be it count 0, count of 1, and then we calculate our sum and then compare it to the maximum sum. These are the three steps that we'll be moving through. So here the character is 0 and therefore we increase the count of 0 and that now comes to 1. Here count of 1 is 4 already and therefore we get the sum 5, and this is what we update in the master. So this is how our for loop goes. So this makes one for loop, this makes another for loop. So there are totally two for loops running, but one after the other and not nested for loop. So therefore we get the time complexity of OS, and like again space complexity is constant because we are not using any extra space. This is the concept of prefix sum basically, and the code goes like the out. This is the first for loop where we, if the character is 1, we increase the count of 1, and by the end of this for loop we have the total number of ones in our substring stored in the variable count 1. Then in the second for loop, we see if the character is 0, we increase the count of 0, or if the character is 1, we decrease the count of 1. So as to maintain the number of zeros and ones that we have to take in the calculation, because number of, if, like, the concept behind this is if there are zeros in the left substring, we have to increase its count and include it in the sum. But if there are ones in the left substring, we are ideally decreasing ones from the right substring, and therefore we have to decrease the count, and that is why we take it like this. So then we calculate the total sum, which is nothing but count of zeros and count of ones. And count of 0 in the left substring is what we increase in calculate, and count of 1 in the right substring is what we decrease in calculate out of the total number of ones in the total string or the complete string. And then we compare it with the maxim and get the final output. So now let's code this as well and see what can do better. So here these two variables will remain as it is. We take another int count 1 as 0. This is what we initialize, and then we write a for loop. And here if character is 1, then we increase the count. Right. So by the end of this for loop, we will have the total number of ones in the string stored in this variable. Now post this, we take another variable, say count 0 here, initialize it to this, and here we begin the loop with from 0, like the first character itself, and we have to take one character less because we need to have at least one character in the right substring as well. That's why we will need this again, or we can just directly take it like count of 0 plus count of 1, and that will work as well. But okay, fine, let's take it like this. And here we just compare it with if the character is 0, we will increase the count of 0, or if the character is 1, we'll just increase the count of 1, right? Let's format it properly. And we are done. Now let's check. Okay. Did not change the variable. You do not have any j here. Okay, so I hope we are done. And yes, so we have a better runtime as well as space complexity this time. So this makes us arrive at the proper optimal solution, which is O and time complexity and O one space at a constant space. So thank you guys. Have a nice day and looking forward to have another solution tomorrow.